Sayadaw Yangon Juadwaga Pognido de Yahobo Dawanja Leja Dawan Leshido Gadine Pogni de Yasa Home. The Yavaro levels, Jesu Rojan Sayadaw Yogi de Bo Yeji in the Tajam de Yari Sabio Bido. Sayadaw Hodwaro Muvare. Dajam Pumilevadi in the Nebada de Yave Sabido Biome Lolosi Gutare.
Sayadawgyi has gone to Yangon, and therefore Sayadaw has the job of continuing to give the Dhamma talk. And he's decided to continue the topic that Sayadawgyi began of the causes for sharpening the ruling faculties, the indriyas.
In the Nebada de Yaga Leve Yogi Po Yeji de Yave, Yeji zone de Yalu down Piolo Yavare. Daja, Jesu Rojan Sayadaw Hore, the Ribere, the near leve, the Amzia Sayadaw leve, the Indrina Pada Bido Biodore, Hodore, Belover Hodi Pize, the Diana Padaluaro, Holo Mago, Nalo Mago, no, Mimiro Po, a lower zone the Yari, Didon Lundam.
For the yogis, this is a most important topic, the topic of the indriyas, or ruling faculties. And therefore, Sayadawgyi began to talk about it. Also, TMC Sayadaw spoke about this topic. And no matter how you speak about it, you really can't do it justice. You can't complete talking about the topic. There's much to say.
Jesu Rojan Sayadaw Loro, a daisy do Biom Jana Mumbo. Sayadaw Nyandole, Sayadaw Nyando Dwadalo, Pogino Madwana Mumbo, Avimelo, Pogino Sayadaw Leve, a daisy Nyanjava Lime, or Java Lime, Pogino a boy and loud bay, Nale the loud Biodwa man.
He says that he can't talk in as great detail as Sayadawgyi is going to talk. And he knows that Sayadawgyi will go into this in great detail. His talk, he says, will just be superficial.
Yogi Po, Ola Yeji the Indri Ngava, Tepo Jondea Kuba. Jesu Rojan Sayadaw the Gova Jambian Le Biodwa Babi, no Hodwa Babi. Alum Lebe Mami Nijabi Mulalo.
There are 9 causes for sharpening these 5 ruling faculties that Sayadawgyi just gave the 9 causes as headings. Do you all remember them?
So
if he goes over these 9 topics again, will you be bored?
No, that they are not a jurema.
There are 5 benefits to hearing the Dhamma, and one of those, to hearing the Dhamma again, and one is that although it's not new, hearing it again and again, one takes it in, one takes it to heart. So Sayadaw asks, what is the first of the 9 causes for sharpening the indriyas?
ဖြစ်ကုန်သောယုံနာတရားတွေမိမိရှုမှတ်တဲ့ယုံနာတရားတွေဟာပြတ်တတ်တဲ့သဘောရှိတာပဲလို့ဒီလိုနားလည်ထားရမယ်စိတ်ညွတ်ထားရမယ်လို့ဆိုလိုတယ်နော်
So this means that one must keep in mind that every single arising object goes away.
မိမိတို့တရားအထုတ်ကစားမှာယုံနာရဲ့အဖြစ်အပျက်ကိုနားမလဲမိမိတို့ရဲ့ဉာဏ်ဖြင့်ဘာဝနာမယဉာဏ်ဖြင့်ကိုယ်တိုင်မသိနိုင်သေးတော့လည်းပဲခုလိုကြိုတင်နားလည်ထားခြင်းဖြင့်မိမိတို့အားထုတ်လို့ကိုယ်ဉာဏ်နဲ့ကိုတွေ့ပြီးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒါအထောက်အထားသက်သေပြစရာတစ်ခုဖြစ်သွားတာပေါ့လို့အဲ့ကြတော့လည်းပဲကိုယ်တိုင်သိနားလည်သွားပါလိမ့်မယ်လို့
At the start of practice, one doesn't know through one's own meditative knowledge, bhavana miyajnana, that all things pass away. But to keep this in mind in advance means that when we do experience it in practice, we confirm what we have heard.
ဒုတိယအချက်အနေနဲ့တထကြစက္ကိကြကိရိယာယသံပါတိတိတဲ့အဲ့ဒီလိုယုံ nant တရားတွေရှုမှတ်တဲ့ယုံ nant တရားတွေကဖြစ်တတ်ပြတ်တတ်တဲ့သဘောတွေရှိတာပဲလို့သိနာလဲပြီးတော့ရှုမှတ်တဲ့နေရာမှာလည်းပဲတဲ့အဲ့လိုသိနိုင်ဖို့အတွက်ရိုးရိုးသေးသေးလေးလေးစားစားရှုမှတ်ရမယ်တဲ့
So bearing in mind that all dhammas, all things that we experience in our mind and body have this nature to arise and then pass away, one works respectfully to see that in practice.
အဲ့ဒီလိုရိုးသေးသေးလေးလေးစားစားရှုမှတ်ပြီးလို့ဆိုရင်ဒါမိမိတို့ရဲ့အိန္ဒြေတွေထက်ဖို့ကိစ္စလည်းပဲပြည်စီပြည့်စုံနိုင်တယ်လို့ဆိုလိုတာပါနော်
So when one works respectfully in this way, in the practice, that means that one is accomplishing the task of sharpening one's controlling faculties, these 5 ruling faculties.
တတိယအချက်ကတော့သတိကြကိရိယာယသံပါတိတိအဲ့ဒီလိုရိုးသေးသေးလေးလေးစားစားရှုမှတ်တဲ့နေရာမှာကြားထဲမှာတမတ်နဲ့တမတ်တမာရီပြတ်ဆဲနေတာမျိုးကျိုးပြတ်နေတာမျိုးမဖြစ်စေရဘူးနော်အမှဆက်တိုက်ဖြစ်နေဖို့လည်းလိုအပ်ပါတယ်တဲ့အဲ့ဒီလိုဆက်တိုက်မှတ်ခြင်းဖြင့်မိမိတို့ရဲ့အိန္ဒြေတွေဟာထက်စေတဲ့ကိစ္စလည်းပဲပြီးစီးနိုင်ပါတယ်တဲ့
The third cause is SADHU kiriyaya sampaditi. That means that in the area of this respectful observation, as one works to develop the practice, there's no gap in between one's moments of observation, in between one's moments of concentration. One has to observe continuously.
အဲ့ဒါဒီပထမအချက်ရဲ့ဒုတိယအချက်ရဲ့တတိယအချက်ရဲ့ပေါ့နော်ဒီ 3 ချက်ဟာမိမိတို့ရှုမှတ်တိုင်းယုံနာဟုတ်လားတစ်ချက်မှတ်ချက်တိုင်းမှာကိုဒါအရေးကြီးတဲ့ 3 ချက်ပဲလို့ဒီလိုပြောရမယ်လို့နော်
So these first 3 causes are the most important for us to fulfill every moment of observation.
အဲ့ဒါမှတ်ချက်တစ်ခုမှာဒီ 3 ချက်မညီဘူးလို့ဆိုရင်ဒါအားနည်းချက်တစ်ခုပဲလို့ပြောရတော့မှာပဲလို့
So if in one moment of observation one of these 3 is not present, then that means there's a weakness.
ဒီဘာဖြစ်လို့တော့ဆိုရင်နံပါတ် 1 ကဟုတ်လားဖြစ်စေယုံနာနေကိုဟုတ်လားအပြတ်တရားရှိတယ်သဘောပေါက်နားလဲစိတ်ညွတ်ထားရမယ်နံပါတ် 2 ကအဲ့ဒီလိုစိတ်ညွတ်ပြီးရှုတဲ့နေရာမှာရိုးသေးသေးလေးလေးစားစားဒါရှုဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်တ Tatiya Jaga, Adalo Yodi, the lilies are the children, Yamaleve. She Nyan and Naunya, she man and Nauma, she the Marine and now the Mari. Sadai Pinivazi, no? Di Donjabe.
So these three are that all the phenomena that we can observe, all mind and matter, have the nature to arise and pass away. One has to understand that in advance. And in observing these phenomena, one must work respectfully. And in our observation, one moment of knowledge must follow another. One moment of concentration must follow another. These are the 3 points that we must always have. Must always be present.
Number 4 Jaga, Sabaya Giriya Sambadidi. Mimiro Yogi ne Tinliome, Mimiro ne Tinliome. Tabaya Pime, a Yarvigo leve, Tintin Liam Baswa, Miwea made.
So number 4 is Sapaya Kiriyaya Sampadeti. That means that as yogis, we must have what is suitable for us. We must rely on things to a suitable extent.
Adilo Tintin Liam Bade, Ya, Konaba, Konamio, Miwebido, Atoyen, the Mimido.
If we depend on these 7 suitable things in doing our practice, that means that this cause for sharpening the ruling faculties is present.
Number 5 Jaga, Samadhi Saja, Nimejak Ganena Sambadidi. Mimiro Diado de Kaidama. The Gadakama Kakari Shida, a Kakari Shilo, Josa Mayan, the Mari Lady Disavdore, a binary Shide. Adilo, the Mari Disav Media, a binary she, a Kakawo Jogelo, the Mari Lady Gauna, a binary Shige, Madatava.
Sorry to be Pimpioba.
The art of the Kama, the Ashumabu Kakere, a binary she,
Mama.
Adio Kake with Josa Artoyen, I Kakeli, Joa Bido, the Mari Gongware, a binary she, Adi Gonged, the Mari Gonged, a binary, Madatava.
So at times when we practice, there are difficulties. And if one works in the practice, one can get to the point of overcoming these difficulties and becoming concentrated. One has to remember the way one concentrated one's mind when one was able to develop good concentration.
Adilo, a Kake would Jogelo, Shumagano, the Mari Lady Pida, a binary. She gave Madata Bido. Now the Jama, Dilova, a Kakeli, tweeted. Tweeted a Kama, Dini would be Ambido, a Doncha. Allo, Doncha, Shuma champion leve, Mimia. In the Chapo, John Giza, busy doing my head.
So, like that, in the past, we've been able to overcome our difficulties and develop samadhi. So, when we encounter a difficulty, again, we remember the way we overcame a similar difficulty or the same difficulty in the past. So we use that method that we know worked before to gain samadhi again. We remember the way that we were able to concentrate our mind before, and we use that method. So this too is another way of sharpening the ruling faculties.
Taima de Kama Kakari Dwige Budala. Zinyan Shabda Kama Mabu Kakari Dwige Budala. Dwige Bulu Joge Budala.
So Sayadaw asks, doing sitting meditation, have you ever encountered a difficulty? During walking meditation, have you encountered a difficulty?
Pamu Bemu Josa Mane, Taima de Kama, Pamu Bemu Madrivene Kage Shigera Junge Budala. Gandagama Pamu Bemu Biaunida Muri Junge Budala. Other look careful. The Gandagama Mimi saying the London Madelo, the Yamshumamu Kakeni. Other look Kakeri, Twigelu, Jogere, a binding she, the Mari Pike, a binding she, Madatava, now the Chima Bianet, don't chabio. The Mari Tisavo, Leguvali made.
So, for example, have you ever been sitting and not been able to follow the rising and falling? Not been able to find it? Or has it disappeared? So if you've had this type of difficulty and you've been able to overcome it, then this is the way that you can use to concentrate your mind in the case of difficulties.
Now, number 2, Chega Bujanga Ninja Anubodanataya. The Gadakama Tendinly about the bosom the Yari. Mimi Yadanama, Pizia made Adi Dagaleve, Mimi Enrigo, Chazibo, Jauntukube.
So the 6th cause for sharpening the Indriyas is Bojanganancha Anupavitanataya. That means that sometimes we have to create the factors of enlightenment, develop the factors of enlightenment suitably in ourselves.
Takadagama yogi, Jumda Bare, the area Josama Bime, the Malu Magamu, or Sida di Jani that Kamuri Shime, the Anyani Jani that Kamuri Leshi. The Gadagajaro leve Magam Sembilo. One that I have Chibia, Sidi, the Joani that Kamuri Leshi that did. Edelo, Jani that Kaima, no? About my denny that Kaidi, Sida Denny, Joani that Kaidima. Then the about the bosom the ya.
What this means is that sometimes the yogis try, but although they try, the noting isn't going well, the practice isn't going well, and then one gets depressed, and one's concentration drops, one's knowledge drops. And other times the practice is going well, we feel happy, satisfied, and we get elated and excited. So there are these two things that can happen. Sometimes things fall and sometimes they're excessive. So one needs to reflect suitably on the factors of enlightenment at these times to create balance.
As a yogi say a janet, a job, Dinaku, Dindin, Pinsin Biame, Dindin a bosom, they are Bomian Biame, Suraga. Sayadawgyi a main sheet the load, so in the Kamatan Sayari in a Bobido, that's I'm married. Kamatan Sayari Gabe, the yogi yet. Then Bosom Diago, Nyonja, Tenja Beijing, Yogi Yesiga, Sempi Dwana in it. Indri Diaria, Sempi Dwana in it.
So there's depression and then there's elation. And in these cases, one has to develop the factors of enlightenment in a suitable way. And as Sayadawgyi has said, this is related to one's individual meditation teacher. This is something the individual teacher is able to point out to the students when they encounter this type of problem. And because of that, the faculties, the indriyas, are able to be developed and sharpened. So, for example, Sayadaw is meeting daily with the yogis and giving them the guidance that they need to correct what needs to be corrected.
Number 9 Kayeja jiwiteja anabhikata upathabedi. Nandara wusiya ma lumya aw tamatabo yabo juza athuk jare yogi de pho. Di taya yabo so yin mimi ye adat ne khana ko mangel be athuk rame de. Adalo siat dong dong cha songpyat chet cha bi athuk jare yogi de so yin mimi ro indri de thattan pho nyi nyot pho da ajaung takku be de.
Number 7 is Kayeja Jiviteja Anupakanti. That means that in this practice, which is for gaining release from the suffering of samsara, which is for gaining the first path and fruition, one has to really try very hard. One has to try without considering one's life and limb. And if one practices in this way, then this becomes a cause for one's indriyas to become sharp.
So
when you're practicing, ask yourself, is there consideration for my life and my limb?
So when
Sayadaw said, Bhante, I don't have any care for my life and limb, but my cushion is a little bit thin. So how many times do you change position during a sitting? That too is one of the ways that we have consideration for our body.
The vipassana longan say go dinye on look at look bed. Say go dinye boat so yen, but a ma go dinye boga yeji there, Sayadaw you may move.
Now Sayadawgyi has spoken about this before. Vipassana is the practice to calm the mind, to make the mind subtle and calm. So first of all, the body has to be still. So if in 1 hour one changes one's position twice, isn't the concentration broken? So if one changes 4 times in an hour, doesn't that destroy the samadhi?
5 minutes the jane bien the yare, 7 minutes the jane bien the yare, 5 minutes the jane bien the yare, so him. The Mari people come to.
So if one changes every 15 minutes, or one changes position every 10 minutes, or every 5 minutes, won't it be difficult to gain samadhi?
A good time be the day I shoot money. A low 2 riba, Bemaman Kega and Bashido, a dali tiny kind of way. Time can be the Pamu Bemulego Zaiji, Dinaku Zaiji, so be the a low beta, a low Bemana Bashido.
Sayadaw said, all we have to do is sit there, and we only have 2 things to watch, rising and falling. So what is so tiring about it?
Ponyo Biamaga, the Gaidia of Biogure, Simbearuada, Bakadum Biora, the Nebubuma, Ona Jauke to be Nebubuma Jauke to Niaragama, Dada de Pia, Alotagaji, Biogure.
There was a layman who told Sayadaw, "What is so difficult about this? Standing in the sun and having to hit a rock is much more difficult."
Okay, da kone and the mangegwa, no? Da kone and the mangegwa, Tona me soyem, da Mimido at the Mari did a pia in the day, Tabo Jaume.
So, not having regard for one's life and limb is one of the causes for one's faculties, one's indriyas to become sharp.
Now, Shikumyaga Tataja Bibuya Nikamina, somebody did Edilo Gonian de Mangagua Bene, Juza Ato de Kaima, no, Yunan de Arigo, Tivo Juza Ato de Kaima, Pibola de Doka with an Ari, she made Adi Ozago, Shumamune, Jolana on Juzaya made.
So the eighth cause is Tatacha Abiboya Nakamaina. That means that in practicing without regard for one's life or limb, there will be unpleasant, uncomfortable feelings which arise, and one has to work to overcome these.
Nazo Ogumyaga and Raja Abyo Samina Kulo Doga about Yinzi would Yajuza Atude Kama Mimi Yimane Yimanja Banai, Mayao Debu Soyen, Mayao Machin Didiaga Nibio, Twamadovane, Lemia Shumbi Madovane.
So that the ninth cause is Antaracha Abhyosanena. That means that one, in this effort, in this practice we've undertaken to try and to overcome suffering, before we reach our goal, we shouldn't end our retreat, we shouldn't give up.
Mimi lo at the day. Panai Mayao Machimo, Didiagani, Twamadovane, Solura.
So that means that before one gains the Dhamma that one is looking for, not to leave the retreat.
Modiagani Somadovane.
Tiago,
Give up Lomadone.
Don't give up.
I the Goja Dema. Kuna Biogere Goja Loma, Mimiroya Indri, Temia for Jow. Not the Goja, Loa the Lupizia made.
So, among these 9 points, these 9 causes for sharpening the ruling faculties, one has to fulfill them appropriately for one's indriyas to become sharp.
Either the Gojadema, Ye Jizo, Kunala Biogere, or a Mimiro Amadaima Mapimani Piezo Wame, Ye Jizo Chesolution, but a Mache, no, Dudia Cheye, Dadia Cheye.
Among these 9, as Sayadaw mentioned, the most important are that number 1, number 2, and number 3 be present in every single noting.
Hello, Shumanda Yonandari, Pia Pieta the Boshi de Nale Tavi, number Deche. Hello, Nale Bida, Dagiza Gria, Dudia, or La Chen in a Yo de Lilies as a Suicide, Shubu, Ade, Piora.
So that means that every time one observes Nama and Rupa, one should understand that these have the nature to arise and pass away. And one should observe respectfully and without a break.
Sakija Giriyaya Sambhaditi, Yodede, Lili Zaza, Suzai Shuba, Sura, Belu Hamuro, so.
So, what does it mean to observe respectfully, focusedly?
Yodede Pulo Amed, Sura, Mimiroye, Dwara, Dwamu, Yamu, Taimu, no, the Logizari, Guida Sana. We don't say nine, dwelling yadai China. That it will pivot Luciabo. Abiyama, Luciana, no name, hope. Yogi Diavia, Luciana, no name, Luciabo. Rago, you did you look there, Solurado.
To work respectfully means that when we go somewhere, when we stand up, when we sit down, when we bend, when we stretch, when we perform any action, we do that slowly. Not like on the outside, not like in our daily life, but like a yogi. So that is what it means to work respectfully.
Adilo Pibi Lubshavama, Mimiro, Shumade Nyanga Manine Nitago Yao Nene Movene Abiyama Lubjadalo. La Dwara Yada Taina Tara Guida Sana. Abiyama Nira no dine Lushame Suyen. The Bezo Bande of Manan Bosura, Mapido.
Only if one does things slowly will one's knowledge be able to keep up with what is doing. If one does things at the speed that one does normally on the outside, one will never be able to stay in the present moment.
Aido, Yogi Diao Pilayan, Allah, Lushara and Noma, that short chapel, they eat, no? Guida Sana Oza Pibi Lujavama, Bizubande, Maname, Belana Yalana, Lana Aza, like Pibi Lama.
So therefore, if one is a yogi, one needs to reduce the speed. And this is very important. When one bends or one stretches, one needs to move slowly so that one can stay in the present. When one lifts the foot, moves, places the foot, one needs to do so slowly so that one can stay in the present moment.
Now, be the Takiza Gria. Suzai Shua Mel, Sura level, Bishop Bande, Shua Mel, Solurabo. Queen, Quiga, Science Sangai, Tayan Tangai, Bishop Bande, Shura, the Takiza Gria, the Takiza Gria, Solura. You did the Shura, Solura.
To Sakacha Kiriyaya, to observe respectfully, means to observe what is happening in the present moment. That means when one is bending, one has to observe bending. When one is stretching, observe stretching. When one is standing up or sitting down, one has to observe standing up or sitting down.
Brahma Bizobande shoe. Bizobande on shoe, allo shoe that come alebe. No? Paramatha the body would deal, side beat or shoe on my way. We and Guida the ball with Devo, Science Sun at the ball with Devo, Pound and Pound at the ball with Devo, Pay and Pay at the ball with Deal, Deal. A Paramatha the ball Deal, side shoe, low amel.
So to observe so that one stays in the present moment means that one has to focus to see the ultimate reality that occur when one performs bending. One has to see what is the true nature involved in bending. So in order to observe so that one can stay in the present moment and come to see the ultimate reality that is there, is it needed to move slowly or not?
အဲ့ဒါမိမိတို့သိထားဖို့ပါပဲအဲ့ဒီတော့ပစ္စုပန်တဲ့ရှုဖို့ဆိုရင်အတိတ်ကြောင်းတွေလည်းပဲပြန်သွားမနေနဲ့ပေါ့ဒါလည်းပဲအရေးကြီးတယ်အတိတ်ထဲမှာလည်းမျောသွားမနေစီနဲ့အနာဂတ်အတွက်လည်းပဲကြိုပြီးသွားမနေစီနဲ့လို့
So one needs to know this for oneself. One needs to stay in the present. Don't dwell in the past. Don't imagine the future.
တရားတော်မှတ်နေပါရဲ့ထိုင်နေပါရဲ့အတိတ်အကြောင်းနော်အိမ်အကြောင်းစီးပွားရေးအကြောင်းပြန်ရောက်နေမယ်ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေအကြောင်းဟိုအကြောင်းဒီအကြောင်းအတိတ်ကိုပြန်သွားနေမယ်ဆိုရင်ဒါပစ္စုပန်တဲ့ပါဦးမလားလို့
So when one thinks about past events, one's home, one's work, people, is that staying in the present moment?
ဒီချိန်ကခရစ်စမတ်ကာလဆိုတာနှစ်တကူကာလဟိုအနောက်ဘက်ကယောဂီတွေမနစ်ကခရစ်စမတ်အကြောင်းပြန်စဉ်းစားနေမလားအော်ဒီနေ့ငါခရစ်စမတ်ကလေးမှမပို့လိုက်ရဘူးလို့ပြန်စဉ်းစားနေအောင်မလား
So this is Christmas time, and some yogis may be reflecting about Christmas, that this year I didn't send out my Christmas cards, something like that.
ဒါလည်းပဲအတိတ်အကြောင်းပဲအော်မနစ်ကတော့သူတို့နော်မိသားစုတွေနဲ့စုံစည်းခဲ့တာပဲအတိတ်ကိုပြန်သွားမနေနဲ့နော်ဘယ်သူတွေနဲ့စုံစည်းခဲ့တာပဲတွေ့ခဲ့တာပဲကြုံခဲ့တာပဲအတိတ်ကိုပြန်သွားနေရင်အခုလောလောဆယ်ပစ္စုပန်မှာရှုမှတ်ရမယ်တရားလွတ်သွားပြီပေါ့
So that's remembering how we sent out Christmas cards last year and that we're not doing it this year, remembering who we met with last year, whether it's our family or other people. That's dwelling in the past. Don't dwell in the past, because if you do that, you can't stay in the present.
ဒီအိန္ဒိယချက်ကြောင်းကိုပါထဲမှာနံပါတ်1အချက်ကဖြစ်စေယုံနာနေရရှုမှတ်စေဟုတ်လားရှုမှတ်တဲ့ယုံနာတရားတွေကနော်ခဏတိုင်းပြက်နေတယ်အပြက်တရားရှိတယ်လို့ဒါအဲ့ဒီလိုနားလည်ထားတယ်နားလည်ထားပြီဆိုရင်အဲ့တော့အပြက်တရားတွေရှိနေရင်ဒါဥစဉ်တို့ကအမြဲတမ်းနှစ်တည်းကူးနေတာပဲပေါ့
So the first cause of sharpening our indriyas is to keep in mind that the nama and rupa, the mind and matter that we observe, arises and then whatever has arisen passes away. That means that for us, it's always New Year's.
အဲ့ရနှစ်တည်းကိုဘာနဲ့ကြိုမလဲကုသိုလ်နဲ့ကြိုမှာပေါ့ကုသိုလ်နဲ့ကြိုတယ်ဆိုရင်ကုလိုတာတရားရှုမှတ်နေတာဟာအချိန်တိုင်းမှာပြက်နေတဲ့ယုံ nant တရားတွေကိုအချိန်တိုင်းနှစ်တည်းကူးနေတော့ဒါအချိန်တိုင်းကုသိုလ်ဖြစ်နေတာပဲလို့ဒါနှစ်တည်းကိုဒါကုသိုလ်နဲ့ကြိုတယ်ဆိုရင်တော့မမှားဘူးလို့
So what are we going to greet the new year with? We're going to greet the new year with kusala, with wholesomeness. Because every time we look at nama and rupa, mind and matter, it's arising and then passing away. So we greet the new one with a wholesome mind.
ဒီမှာ Happy New Year ဆိုတော့မှတခါ online ဖို့အတွက်12လစောင့်ရသေးတယ်နော်ယောဂီတယောက်ကဟုတ်လားမှတ်ချက်တိုင်းမှာဘာဖြစ်လဲဒါ Happy New Year လို့တောင်းအော်လို့ရတယ်လို့
So although some people wait 12 months for New Year's to come so that they can go online and send messages, for us, every moment, it's a new moment. So we can say Happy New Year every moment of the time.
Happy New Year ဆိုရင်တော့ happy ဖြစ်ဖို့တော့ကုသိုလ်တော့ပါဖို့လိုအပ်မယ်လို့အမှတ်လို့ပြီးစဉ်းစားနေရတော့ happy မဖြစ်တော့ဘူးလို့
So in order for us to be happy, it should be wholesome. And for kusala, wholesomeness to occur, then, happy people.
Happy မဖြစ်တော့ဘူး
So if wholesomeness is not there, then kusala is not going to, happiness will not occur.
အဲ့တော့ယုံနံတရားတွေကအချိန်တိုင်းဖြစ်ပြနေပါတယ်ဆိုရင်ကိုယ့်ရဲ့တဏ္ဍာမှာဒါဆိုရင် happy new year တောင်မဟုတ်ဘူးလို့
So if nama and rupa in us is always arising and passing away, is that happy new year?
Happy birthday လို့တောင်ပြောလို့ရမယ်
Maybe we could say happy birthday.
အဲ့ဒါဘာဖြစ်လဲကိုယ်ထဲမှာယုံနံတရားတွေအချိန်တိုင်းဖြစ်ပြကိုနော်ဒီ happy birthday ဖြစ်တယ်ဆိုတာအခုလိုမြင့်မြတ်တဲ့တရားကိုအားထုတ်နေတဲ့ပုံကိုယ်တွေလောက်ပဲသိနိုင်မှာလို့
So this happy birthday that happens with every arising and passing away of nama and rupa, mind and matter, is something that only people who meditate can know.
Okay, happy birthday ဖြစ်ပြီလား
So has a happy birthday occurred?
ဒါမှမဟုတ်လဲ happy new year လား
Or happy new year?
အဲ့ဒါကြိုးစားရမယ်ပေါ့ဒါတက္ကိစ္စကရိယာယတမ္ပါတိတိဒါကိုပြည့်စုံအောင်အားထုတ်ရင်ဒါကိုယ့်ရဲ့တဏ္ဍာမှာဒီအိန္ဒြေတွေကထက်စေနိုင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်
So if one hasn't seen how this is a happy birthday every moment of the time, a happy new year every moment of the time, then one should work to sharpen one's indriyas with these 9 factors.
အဲ့ဒီတော့ပစ္စုပန်တဲ့မှတ်နိုင်ဖို့အတွက်တက္ကိစ္စကရိယာယရိုးသေးသေးလေးလေးစားစားဖြစ်ဖို့အတွက်ဆိုရင်ဟိုတနေ့ကလည်းဆရာတော်ဘုရားကြီးမိန့်နေပါတယ်နော်လှုပ်ရှားတာသွားလာတာဟုတ်လားလူမမာနဲ့တူအောင်ကျင့်ရမယ်တဲ့လူမမာဖြည်းဖြည်းနေလှုပ်ရှားသလိုပဲတဲ့ယောဂီကလည်းပဲအဲ့ဒီလိုလှုပ်ရှားပြီးတော့ကျင့်ကြံရမယ်တဲ့
So in order to stay in the present moment, to be able to observe with respect and care, Sayadawgyi said on another day that one has to move slowly like a sick person.
မျက်စိအမြင်ကောင်းနေတော့လည်းပဲတဲ့ယောဂီဟာနော်မျက်စိမမြင်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်လိုပဲတဲ့အဲ့ဒါလိုပြုကျင့်ရမယ်တဲ့နော်မျက်လွှာချထားရမယ်သိမ့်စီထားရမယ်လို့ဆိုလိုတယ်လို့
So although one's eyes are perfectly good, one has to behave as though one doesn't see. That means to keep one's eyes cast down, to control one's vision.
အဲ့တော့ကိုယ့်နဲ့ကိုပြန်မေးပေါ့ကိုမျက်စိကောင်းလားလုံလားမလုံဘူးလားနော်ထိနိုင်လားမထိနိုင်ဘူးလားထိနိုင်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဒါတက္ကိစ္စကရိယာယတမ္ပါတိတိပြည့်စုံတယ်လို့ပြောရမှာပဲရိုးသေးသေးမှတ်တယ်လို့ပြောရမှာပဲ
So ask yourself, are you able to control your eyes or not? Even though your eyes are good, can you control them? And if so, that means that you are working respectfully, sakya-chakirya. It means that you are working respectfully.
တရားမကောင်းမဲဘူးဆိုရင်ငါမျက်စိမလုံမဲဘူးဒါအဲ့လိုထည့်တွေ့ရမယ်လို့ကိုဆင်ញင်တတ်ရမယ်တတိပေးတတ်ရမယ်
So if your Dhamma is not yet good, one has to reflect on if it's because your eyes are not under control.
ပြီးတော့နားကောင်းတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဖြစ်နေတော့လည်းပဲနော်နားမကောင်းတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်လို့ကျင့်ကြံရမယ်တဲ့အတန်ကြားရင်နားစွန့်တတ်တဲ့အလေမျိုးမဖြစ်စေရဘူးပေါ့ကြားရင်ဟုတ်လားမှတ်စိတ်နဲ့ပဲဟုတ်လားဥအောင်ကြိုးစားကြဖို့ပဲတဲ့
So although our ears are good, we have to behave as though we are deaf. That means that when we hear a sound, we shouldn't turn to observe what's making the sound. One has to try to observe the phenomena of hearing with one's observing power at the moment it happens.
မျက်စိမလုံဘူးနားမလုံဘူးမျက်စိမလုံနားမလုံဘူးဆိုရင်ဒါမှတ်စိတ်လည်းပဲဒါမရှိဘူးပေါ့နော်ဒါတက္ကိစ္စကရိယာယဖြစ်ဖို့အတွက်ကိုတတိထားရမယ်လို့အရေးကြီးပါတယ်လို့
So if one's eyes and one's ears are not guarded, then that means one's observing mind is not going to be able to work. So one has to, these are very important causes, having our eyes and ears guarded are very important in developing our observation.
မျက်စိနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ဘုရားမထေမျက်စိလုံခြုံမှုနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ထိမ့်သိမ့်မှုနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့နော်မထေကြီးတစ်ပါးအကြောင်းကြားဘူးတယ်ရှိတယ်လို့
So in regard to controlling one's eyes, keeping one's vision guarded, there's a story about a rich man.
အဲ့ဒီမထေကြီးရလားလိုင်ကူတစ်ခုမှာတောရကလိုင်ကူတစ်ခုမှာတရင်သုံးနေတယ်တရင်သုံးပြီးတော့တရားရှုမှကြိုးစားတယ်အာထုံနေတယ်ဒီလိုင်ကူထဲမှာလိုင်ကူကြီးကလည်းကြီးကြီးဖြစ်ပါလိမ့်မယ်လိုင်ကူရဲ့နာယံနေမှာရှေးတော့ဘုရားရှင်တို့ရဲ့နဲ့ပတ်သက်တဲ့ဗုဒ္ဓဝံရုပ်စုံတွေရေးဆွဲထားတယ်လို့တော်တော်ခန္ဒီဒုက္ခစရိယကျင့်တဲ့ပုံတွေပေါ့ပြီးတော့လည်းပဲတရားရရတဲ့ပုံတွေ
It should be a Satela. Satela, Yathetla.
Mate.
Sorry, Tavito. So, sorry, not the story about a rich man, but a story about a Mahatera, an old senior monk. So this senior monk was meditating in a cave, and the cave was quite large. And on the walls of the cave, there were paintings of scenes from the Buddha's life and how various people became enlightened and so on.
အဲ့ဒီတော့လိုင်ကူကြီးမှာပကြီးစေးတွေကလည်းရှိတော့ဒီနေ့မှာရဟန်းငယ်တွေရောက်လာတယ်ရောက်လာပြီးတော့ဒီလိုင်ကူကြီးတွေကိုဝင်ပြီးတော့မထေကြီးလည်းပဲဟုတ်လားအယိုသေးပြုလိုင်ကူမှာရှိနေတဲ့စေးဟုတ်လားစေးပကြီးတွေကိုလည်းကြည့်ပြီးတော့ရဟန်းငယ်တွေကဒီလိုင်ကူမှာရှိတဲ့စေးပကြီးတွေကတိတ်ပြီးတော့လက်ရမြောက်တာပဲဘုရားလို့ဆရာတော်ကြီးကိုအဲ့မထေကြီးကိုဟုတ်လားလျှောက်ထားကြတယ်လို့
So there were many paintings in this cave where the senior monk dwelled. And one day, a young monk came. And he entered the cave and he paid respects to the elder monk. And he looked at the paintings. And he said, "These are very good paintings, Bhante."
အဲ့ဒါမထေကြီးကဒီလိုင်ကူမှာတရင်သုံးခဲ့တာနှစ်ပေါင်း30တောင်ရှိပြီတဲ့ငါရှင်တို့ဒီပကြီးစေးရည်တွေရှိမှမသိခဲ့ရဘူးတဲ့ငါရှင်တို့လိုမျက်စိကောင်းတဲ့ဟုတ်လားပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေကပြောပြမှပဲပကြီးစေးရည်တွေရှိမှသိခဲ့ရတယ်တဲ့
And the elder monk said, "Yeah, you know, I've been living here for 30 years, and only now, because you have good eyes and you told me, only now do I know that there's paintings."
ဒါနှစ်ပေါင်း30ဒီလိုင်ကူကြီးထဲမှာတရင်သုံးပြီးတော့တရားအထုတ်ခဲ့တာဒီလိုင်ကူရဲ့နာယံကိုတစ်ချက်မှမောမကြည့်ခဲ့ဘူးလို့အဲ့လိုဆိုလိုတာပဲပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒီလောက်မျက်စိကိုစက္ကုံတွေကိုထိန်းတော်မူတယ်လား
So what that means is the monk lived there for 30 years and meditating, and not once did he look up to see what was on the walls of the cave. So that's how much he guarded his eye faculty.
Yogi တွေနှစ်ပေါင်း30တဲ့ကဲ yogi တွေမျက်စိထိန်းနိုင်မှာမလား
So yogis, can you control your eyes for 30 years?
နှစ်ပေါင်း30မတတ်နိုင်ရင်3လကိုထိန်းနိုင်မှာမလား
So if you can't manage 30 years, can you manage 3 months?
3လများနေရင်3ပတ်ကိုထိန်းနိုင်မှာမလားလျှော့ရရင်
So he'll reduce what he's asking. If 3 months of restraining your eyes is too much, can you restrain them for 3 weeks?
အဲ့ဒါမျက်စိကအရေးကြီးတယ်နော်
Eyes are very important.
နော်မျက်စိကထိန်းတော့ထိန်းညင်ပါတယ်လားဒါပေမဲ့လို့ဆရာတော်ကြီးဘယ်နာမှာရှိတယ်ဆိုတာကမကြည့်ပဲမနေနိုင်ဘူးလား
So one can control one's eyes, but what about looking around to see where Sayadawgyi is?
Sayadawgyi Panditarama Jido. Kamadan Saya Benama Jido, Allah. Asamu Sayadaw Benama Jido, Daga Madi, Allah Majiba Medina.
So don't we manage to look around to see where is Sayadawgyi? Where's our teacher? Where's the monk guarding the Dhamma hall?
Teyame, Mezia, no? Sayadawgyi. Ditakizagriya, Yode de Liliza Tobo so yen. Sayadawgyi Mimi and I would Juala, Lauchia Dhamma. Sayadawgyi the Bomajao. Do Yode. Ola benebo malobu the yagura ayude tabi topo vele Sayadawgyi allo sanashida.
So it's very important to control one's eyes, and Sayadawgyi doesn't want people, even if he comes near somebody, if he happens to be near somebody, he doesn't want anybody to stop their practice and pay respects to him, to lift up their hands in Anjali or bow or anything. He wants people to pay respects with their practice.
Tadiya Chekara, Tadizagriya Yabo, no? Tadizagriya Yagaro. Kulo, Yode de Liliza, Madam Mabare, Adlu Mani Kaima Leve. She man and now ma. She the marine and now the Mari. Adlu, Sadai Pieni, Mapo leve, Yeji de Adalo, Manai Mama leve, Mimido in the area, Tadambo, Tadanai.
And the third cause, Santachakiriyaya, that means that while we are observing respectfully, working respectfully, one moment of observation should follow the next. One moment of concentration should follow the next. Only then will our faculties be sharp.
That is a griya. People, Sadai Mapo, Solusi, with Yogi Rema, or Time Mother Amashide, Zinyan Shao Mother Amashide, a Turivan Mother Abanshide, little Domanshide.
So, for observation to be occurring one moment after another without a break, we have three parts. Three types of observation that we do: sitting, and then we do meditation while walking, and then we do meditation while we're doing general activities.
Adi domai nema. She man and now Sadai Pia Mapo, says that so. A gonzo out that time mother Maha. She now says that me on Manambo, gonzo made.
So, among these three parts to our day, the sitting is where it's the easiest for us to get one moment of concentration, one moment of observation to follow the next.
Miro the tiny Mave Pamu Bemu Manidla, Sadai me on Manambo, no, Dakoni gonzo me, Pamu Bemu Zani Zonkabado Manine, Pamu Bemu the J Manami, a Seji Manami, a Semini Manami, a Maninaze Manami, Sadai, that did Agriya. A Samabia Manambo, a Gonzonga, the times.
So, in one sitting, we watch the rising and the falling one after another. We try to catch the rising from start to the end. So we watch one rising, one falling, 10 risings, 10 fallings, 1 minute, 10 minutes. So the sitting is the easiest.
Dudia Assazagara, Zinyan Shabi, Mada Mabo, no? Ragara Dudia.
And the second easiest for us to have continuity is the walking meditation.
Sadai Manambo to the Akakezwara, the Aturi Mada by me.
The most difficult part for us to have continuity is during observing the general activities.
Editor, in the Tajong Kubarema, number Dega, Allah, Pibia de Piamutiarigo, Ola. Say, Tibida Madakama, Namanega, you did the lilies as a Mayame. Adalu Manine Kama Leve, that is a Gria. A summer be a manangule, ye. Di don't go, be me a manang be so yen, that in the table Jona, Toro Bizum the Lord of Piedwa Vido.
So, among these 9 causes for sharpening our indriyas, the ruling faculties, to understand that all mind and matter arises and then passes away, to respectfully observe, and to do so without a break. These are the most important. And if we can practice every moment with these 3 factors being fulfilled, then we can virtually, this is enough to make our indriyas sharp. So ask yourself if this sakya-kriya, respectful practice, is occurring or not. And then if one's practice is respectful, then ask yourself, okay, is it continuous? Is there satyajya-kriya?
Time be time on be a time the Mario, Zinyan the Maritia. That is a Gria, people, Zinyan the Marina, Samiyame.
So if in one sitting, if one can observe throughout one sitting respectfully and continuously, then one has to take that from the sitting. It doesn't end there. One has to take that from the sitting into the walking.
Zinyan the Mario leve, Ola. Time the Marina, Samion, Josayame, Aramatadija Gria, Piamen.
So, and only when one can carry one's walking concentration, the concentration from walking, into one's sitting, will one be able to work continuously.
Ayo. The donja bizomi, so yen, no, Indri, Tapo, Toro Ale Gaumavi, Indri, Tabi, Zolusian, no, Tauban le Pibi, so yen. Madrid diary, Twila Valley me, Twibida diary, Ola, Shades and Dudwa Valley me.
So if these 3 factors are complete, then one will have good energy for developing the indriyas. One will come to see dhammas that one hasn't seen before, and what one has seen before will become more clear. Yogi
Alo, Ola, the Indri Tajam de Yarema, no, Samabia, Shuman Nanya Vazi, Shuman Chimbia, no, Indri Tayu, the Yari, the Nanya Vazi, the Yadavi, Singing Yapshado, Nibango, the Yadu, the Yamia Digo, or the Wama, Yamo Bunai Mazi, the Yazaka Dodoma, Yamo Bunaya Vazi, the Bunaya me, the Sumbia Chabi, not Josa Ato Nanya.
So Sayadaw says, therefore, that may all yogis decide that may all yogis be able to practice continuously and to be able to sharpen their indriyas, their ruling faculties, and realize the end of suffering, the liberation of nibbana, in this very life. No, in fact, in this very retreat. And may you decide to practice in such a way that you can truly gain this result. That's all for today.
Sadhu.
Sadhu.
Sadhu. Sadhu.